You're listening to Comic Reflections, episode 307. I'm your host, Nicholas Prom, and today I'm joined by my new co-host and producer, Kurt Lloyd.
You are joined by me.
Yes, Comic Reflections is coming back from a lengthy hiatus, but we're now in the fancy ISML studios.
Yeah, the lovely Island Station Media Lab in Island Station, which is a suburb of Milwaukee, Oregon, which in itself is a suburb of Portland, Oregon.
So, Kurt, we're here to talk about an issue of Superman that you picked out. It's Superman number 330, cover dated December of 1978. But according to Mike's Amazing World of Comics, it went on sale September 28th, 1978. Really neat cover by penciled by Ross Andrew and inked by Dick Giordano. Let's talk a little about this cover, Kurt.
I was excited about this.
Yeah?
You let me know that we had an opening for a title, and is there any particular book I wanted to select? And I wanted this issue of Superman because I remember buying it. I was freshly 10 years old, and I bought this issue, and it explained the question that is posed on the cover. Superman standing in Clark Kent's glasses, facing Lana Lang, pointing at the glasses. Lana, now do you believe that I'm Clark Kent? It's the age-old question, how do people not know that Superman is Clark Kent is Superman, vice versa? It's just stupid glasses, and this issue answers that.
Yeah, apparently it's not just stupid glasses. It's pretty complicated. I picked this issue up, I think, at a swap meet, but I hadn't read it until this week, and boy, it's a real humdinger. The story in this issue is called The Master Mesmerizer of Metropolis, written by Martin Pasco, who wrote a lot of things for DC, including Superman and Black Hawk later on. But is based on a story by Al Schroeder II. So I think somebody pitched the idea to him and he fleshed it out.
Anything about Al Schroeder?
Not a thing. I have a feeling he's a friend of Martin Pasco's. He's like, boy, have I got a Superman story for you.
They're just sitting around drinking red wine.
Sure. Sitting
at the porch using the spittoon. Hey, Marty, I got a Superman story for you.
Yeah. So this story was penciled by Curt Swan and inked by Frank Chiaramonte. And the villain of the piece is a one-time Batman foe. I remember him from the Who's Who in the DC Universe, that index book.
I missed him at Batman because that's the only other place I've ever seen Spellbinder.
Yeah, because I think he had one appearance in, I think it's Detective Comics number 258 from 1966.
All right, I'll give it to you because that costume looks like straight out of 1966 Batman.
Oh, yeah, no, I looked at the
go-go
cover.
checks.
Go-go checks on the top of the cover. Oh, yeah. He has go-go checks on the costume, right?
Perfect.
It's classic.
Before you get too far away from the credits, you and I had a discussion a week or so ago, and you brought up to me a quote that somebody had an artist or writer had something they'd said about the wives of writers getting jobs as colorists in the business, and he said it in a dismissive, disdainful way,
right?
And you stood up for the likes of Tatiana Wood, and then here's Adrienne Roy.
Yeah, the late Adrienne Roy, and I thought this was. I heard this story secondhand from a panel that a friend of mine, my co-host on the my side project, the Marvel Saga podcast, gave a panel. Should I reveal the name of this artist so we can all boo hiss at him, or is that distasteful?
Well, let's not preface it by saying that we will boo hiss him. But I don't know.
It's just a real crummy. No, I think I shouldn't.
Hang on to it. Yeah, hang on to it.
But someone someone who was a prominent artist at Marvel in the 80s, great artist, crappy guy.
Well, that happens.
Yeah. And I'll just leave it at that. And but yes, Adrienne Roy did color this, and she did a fine job. Anybody who wants to know the name of that artist, message me privately, and I'll fill you in.
Let's move on with the story.
Yeah. So we have this really strange splash panel where the Spellbinder is fighting Superman over Metropolis, and we're seeing it through like a disembodied pair of glasses.
It's not just a giant pair of glasses surrounding them. It's in the foreground.
Yeah.
All right. I'll buy that.
You buy that for 35 cents.
Tell me about
40 cents.
What do you know about Spellbinder? Do you know anything about his powers? Because he's got like looks like one of those Ozark jet boat motors on his back spinning around. Is
right.
that?
I think that's something that they came up with him to use for this story. I mean, I haven't read that Batman story that he was in, but I have a feeling that he was, not a flying character in that, and that they developed that so that he could fly around and fight Superman.
All right, I'm going to go find my who's who, and I'm going to find out a little more about Spellbinder, and maybe we'll insert that at the beginning of the next episode, just as an addendum.
Yeah. I did not consult my who's who. So we carry on to the after the splash page. The folks at GBS News are spotting a satellite plummeting towards Metropolis and the GBS building itself. And Lois, Lana, and Jimmy are urging Clark to switch to Superman and stop this.
Yeah, come on, Clark. It's no time to be coy, says Jimmy. And it's like a setup.
Yeah.
There's got to be a setup,
He's
right?
like,
That can't really be a
what?
satellite.
What are you talking about? I'm not Superman. And Jimmy pulls open his shirt to reveal his costume.
Uh-oh, I know where this is going.
Oh.
Is they're going to Bobby Ewing this thing?
Oh. Yes. I think you're right, Kurt.
It's all a terrible dream.
Yeah. Bobby Ewing is right because Superman wakes up from a dream.
Are those burritos on his pajamas?
I'm not sure what they are. I
They're
think
probably just like the early, heading into the 80s, they had a lot of graphical designs, and that looks like the very early version of that.
Remember the mayor in Jaws where he had that sweet suit with the anchors on it?
Of course I do.
Yeah.
Oh, I want that suit now.
Everybody wants that suit now.
But anyway, these are terrible pajamas. So
Yeah.
you shouldn't be wearing them.
But of course, in his inner monologue, he reminds us, the reader, that he doesn't need sleep, but his physically he doesn't need it. But sometimes his mind needs the rest. But
I think these two panels deserve to be read because the inner dialogue that you spoke of, this kind of is where the axis on which the rest of the story turns. And Clark, looking in the mirror, says to himself, if there's any truth to that dream, as my disguise as Clark Kent is really that bad. Even if I do change my voice slightly when I pose as Clark, and there's a thing that we know. That's one way that they've said he's differentiated
and then
himself.
he slumps and wears his hair differently.
Yeah, he said, can my dual identity really be that easy to see through? He soothes back the curl on his forelock. He dons the glasses, and he says to himself, now that I stopped to think about it, that's the dumbest disguise I've ever seen.
Yeah.
So
which is a
even
thing a
he
lot of
doubts.
people have been saying this.
Yeah,
Readers.
even he doubts it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what to do? What's to do? So as he this is at Clark's apartment. It's not at the fortress. In the 70s, they're doing a lot more of these hanging out in Metropolis and less at the fortress.
He even talks about how he came up with the idea to wear glasses as Clark when he was a kid.
Yeah.
Like Superboy came up with that idea at some point.
So, he gets dressed, ready for work, and he takes the bus. And, someone recognizes him as Clark Kent from the news. And then he's thinking more like, okay, but this has got to be a pretty good disguise if people aren't if I'm a famous person and people aren't recognizing me wait, aren't you Superman?
So even he doesn't know why people buy it. He even talks about how his friends might be just playing along with the gag, and then he stops himself. He's like, I've seen Superman in some really tight situations where he's just getting the snot beat out of him.
Sure.
And I've never seen this much self-doubt portrayed as just this journey to the bus to get to work. He's like, maybe they know and they're just humoring me. Am I just eating Hattie? I don't know where it comes from.
I don't know.
But there it is right on the page.
Now, when you're reading this, did A Day in the Life by the Beatles pop in your noggin?
A little bit. Just as I was saying, the journey to the bus to get to work, it rang in my head a little bit.
Yeah. But he's on the bus, and then there's trouble because the Spellbinder is flying over Metropolis, and he's hypnotized an armored car into crashing, or the drivers of an armored car, into a fountain. Property damage. And so Superman, as Clark, disembarks from the bus and quickly slips down a manhole and switches to Superman and springs into action against Spellbinder.
He doesn't look like he's disembarking off the bus as much as he's being rushed out in a wave of panicked bus riders.
Yeah, the bus driver has everybody get off the bus, which, first of all, why didn't they just keep going on their route? This didn't impede their...
No, the bus didn't, it didn't blow up the engine. There were no cars stacked in front of it that it couldn't move. It could have just kept going, which I think I probably would have.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's like, what?
But Clark steps out of the bus and, in order to get away from the crowd and prying eyes, just walks straight to a absolutely sublime bit of synchronicity. There's an open manhole 4 feet in front of the bus opening. So he just walks to the open manhole, falls down, and then flies out as Superman so fast that no one can see him.
Right.
I love comic books.
Me too. They're pretty fun. So he goes and he gives Spellbinder a sock on the jaw. Doesn't affect Spellbinder because he's built in like a shock absorber into his helmet.
Worst and tiniest effect. What are the onomatopoeic sound effect?
Yeah.
Ever. Frap. Like that's the sound of a Superman punch landing, even if it didn't affect him.
No, he does say that he was holding back because he's kind of just testing the waters. He doesn't want to like really hurt this guy. So it was kind of a weak punch.
Do you ever wish that he would just unload?
And turn people into red mist?
Yeah. Like all he has to do is do it to one guy.
I think when Alan Moore do you remember that series that Image had, Supreme? And it was kind of a dark Superman?
Absolutely, I do. Yeah.
Okay. I think they explored that in there because I remember Supreme like spinning around and just like destroying like regular people. Because this was a Supreme who had left Earth and came back, and all his sidekicks and all his friends had been killed by supervillains, and he just wasn't gonna be.
I don't think I got that far into the series, but I'm going to go back now. Thank you.
Yeah, and he just wasn't going to hold back like that, and so yeah, he like tore people to pieces basically.
Well, I'm in. I would maybe like one. Has there ever been a Superman book where he just went off the deep end, didn't have any,
and did that?
Didn't have any fucks left to give, and just like powdered people?
Not that I've read.
I would not want that as a series. That's not the Superman that I'm cheering for. I'm just saying just once.
I'm not saying that hasn't been done in like an Elseworlds or something, but if it has, it's not something I've read and am aware of. The closest thing would be the Injustice series that's kind of set in that video game world, where Superman is evil for some reason.
All right, if anybody listening knows of such a story, I would love to read it. Just catharsis.
Sure.
All right.
Okay.
Superman displays his suction breath, which is not a power that you see often, but a power that always makes me giggle.
I read this story twice, and I didn't even realize that he did that. Because if you look at it, it just looks like he's using super breath. But yeah, he picks up a cab.
And he has such control over his suction breath that he can levitate the cab. He doesn't just suck it straight up to his mouth.
Right.
He levitates the cab.
Oh, and that's because Spellbinder has sent a little girl walking into the path of an oncoming vehicle. And because he has hypnotic powers. And Superman, rather than swooping down to get the little girl, he picks up the cab so she doesn't get hit. So that's clever.
Yeah, if the meter's running on that, what's the charge for being suspended in the air by suction breath?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is the person in the backseat being billed for the melee time?
I wish I knew this. I've never ridden in a cab. I don't think.
Seriously?
I don't think.
Oh, well, one night I'll get you drunk and shove you into one.
Oh, good.
And you just call me from wherever you wake up at. Spellbinder has push buttons.
Yeah.
Like he has a push button eye of Ra or Osiris or whatever that is.
Of Hypnotis.
On Hypnotis.
Hypnosis.
That's going to be probably in the Who's Who. I'll look that up too.
Yeah.
That he presses, and I know that's just the way it's drawn, but it looks like a giant spring is bursting out of his chest, hitting Superman. I know that it is a spellbinding ray of power. Is that ever explained what that is? Why that has a physical force to it?
I think it's so it can visually look like something in a comic. So then the Spellbinder creates an illusion of a monster coming out of a fountain to delay Superman so he can make his getaway.
It is coming out of a fountain, but when you look at it, And we all love Kurt Swan.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like a fountain.
It looks like a cake.
Yeah, it looks like he's at a
The
Shriners
monster-
convention. He's been hired for the
monster's
banquets.
coming out of the bachelor party cake.
Yeah.
What was Spellbinder after even? Diamonds, right?
Spellbinder was after diamonds. And is the monster not created out of diamonds?
It has a diamond look to it. I'll give you that. Of course, it is merely an illusion.
That has a really strong hug.
Well, here's the thing. If you're hypnotized and you think you're fighting a thing, it's going to seem real, right?
All right, that's fair.
So then Superman realizes it's an illusion as the thing disappears. I guess the spell once the spellbinder's not around, his hypnosis kind of wears off. It seems rather quickly.
And all the bystanders there have amnesia. They have no idea what just happened.
Yeah.
Superman does not. Is that a side effect of being Kryptonian?
We're just going to have to figure that out as we proceed through this story.
Fair enough.
There's a subplot at GBS that doesn't really go anywhere. I feel like we could maybe skip that.
There's not. GBS never went anywhere. Like it was there, and it was a thing, and then it wasn't a big deal, and then it was But you're right. They had a lot of B story, a lot of subplot, a lot of soap opera at GBS around this time, late 70s.
Yeah,
early 80s.
they're trying to do something. Now, there's this guy who shows up. It's his first day, and he looks like Clark Kent in a disguise. He looks like Superman wearing a mustache and a pipe. And that's what I thought. I thought, what is this going on with this plot? But turns out it's just some other guy that was coming to work at GBS. He was going to start earlier, but he'd been kidnapped by Metallo.
He's got the forelock, the whole bit.
Yeah, the spit curl.
That is a nice mustache. Have gun will travel. That is a Paladin mustache.
Yeah.
4 people that listen to this, by the way, will really appreciate the Paladin reference.
Yeah, I'm one of those 4.
Fabulous.
But I think that's a red herring. Like you're meant to think like, what is it? Is this more about Superman trying a new disguise or something?
Because it's not followed up on as far as you know.
As far as I know. But then again, I haven't read every Superman from this period. So
fair enough. You know what? I'm going to search that guy out too.
They reference, I think, in an earlier issue, like 317, where Metallo attacked, and this guy, I guess, was in that. But I don't know if I've read that one.
Oh, I'm going to dig in on the issues immediately after this.
See, yeah, I would have looked up on it if I knew you were going to bring it up. But
Eagle Eyes, my friend. Eagle Eyes.
So Superman shows up with a giant floating TV screen, presumably something he built at the fortress, with a message for everyone in Metropolis to say, can you let me hypnotize you? Because I'm going to make you immune to the hypnotic spell of Spellbinder, this villain that's rampaging across Metropolis.
So if you're going to hypnotize a group of people, a giant television screen is a great start.
Apparently.
And then swinging a watch back and forth.
It's not a watch.
Not
Superman
cliche.
takes off his belt.
Oh, that's right. The shiny belt buckle, the yellow belt buckle.
Yeah.
I know you can hypnotize people with a TV.
Yeah, I was -4 when this issue came out. So Superman says, okay, like I'm hypnotizing you, and he gives this special words to when you'll be unhypnotized or whatever. People don't know they're hypnotized. And he wasn't able to get everybody in Metropolis, but a lot of them. And so this is to undermine the Spellbinders.
So he puts a post-hypnotic suggestion in their brains to counteract an attempt by Spellbinder to further hypnotize them.
Yeah.
And then he just says awaken, and they all awaken.
Yeah. And they have no memory of what has just transpired.
Because every one of them was watching the giant TV in the sky. No one was in the bathroom.
Right.
No one was maybe working on the sewers underground, didn't know there was a giant TV in the sky.
See, I would think, because it's only pointed in one direction, too. I would think that really he got like a few hundred people at most with this.
Yeah, in the nearby vicinity.
Yeah.
And if the audio's that loud, is it not going to be garbled? If it's in the middle of the city, it's going to be reflecting off a bunch of surfaces, be really tough to hear from a distance.
There's a lot of stuff.
And it's a cathode ray tube.
Yeah, so it's heavy.
Yeah. I don't know if this would work, but comic books.
Comic books. Okay, folks, we're going to take a quick promotional break, and we'll be back. We'll finish the rest of this Superman story.
You've heard the myths and sagas. You've read the comics. You've seen the films. Now you can experience the adventures of Thor, Hercules, and more in a completely new way.
Ere the battle be resolved, let the Thunder God prevail. Thor will crumble under my power, the power of Loki.
I am the will and the way. I am all Father, and none shall say me nay.
Donald Blake, have you forgotten that we have a dinner date tonight?
Join me, Tom Harris, almost every Thursday for Radio Free Asgard. Every episode, we take a look at a new chapter in the lives of your favorite mythological heroes, from the Iron Age of Europe through the Bronze Age of comics, the Marvel movies, and beyond. All that and silly voices, too. Come join us at RadioFreeAsgard.com.
Hey, Kids Comics!
Hey, Michael.
Yeah?
We need to do a new promo.
A new one?
A new one.
Why?
Because we've moved.
Moved?
We've moved to a new place. We still read comics.
We do. We still talk about comics.
Because you can't do a comic book podcast unless you read and talk about comics, because that's kind of stupid. But now, we have a new episode still available every Thursday, but at twotruefreaks.libsyn.com.
Hey, Kids Comics!
So remember, Hey Kids Comics has moved to twotruefreaks.libsyn.com. Still, every Thursday. That'll do, won't it?
Yeah.
So Superman says, okay, I'm going to go and switch back to Clark, go into the GBS wardrobe. Nobody should be there around now. But Lana and the new guy are walking into that room to get this guy a blazer.
Yeah,
So-
that's why they were walking in the room.
Yeah, so anyway, they see Clark, or Superman, changing into Clark clothes. And this is where it starts to get weird.
So Lana's the first one to spot him and calls him Superman. Doesn't call him Clark. He's standing in his Clark gear with the glasses on, but the shirt is unbuttoned, and you see the Superman logo, and she just calls him Superman and says, hey, why are you wearing those silly glasses?
What?
That's right.
Yeah.
Superman says, Lana doesn't recognize me. That is insane. I don't know what's going on, but if my secret identity is still secure, I might as well take advantage of the situation. So, yeah, Supes, you do that. And Lana doesn't even know who he's trying to dress up as. She's like, you're not going to fool anybody looking like that. I don't even know who you're trying to be.
Right. Well, he says, okay, with the Spellbinder around, what I thought is I would borrow Clark's identity and, so I could go about as a regular citizen and suss out the Spellbinder.
And Lana, she sees Superman and Clark as looking completely different.
Weird, right?
Absolutely weird. But again,
Comics.
books. Yeah.
So they have a little chat with the staff artist, Ernie.
Ernie's got to be modeled after somebody, don't you think?
He kind of looks like the hair is the facial hair is kind of in the vein of the Marv Wolfman Len Wein mold of the 70s.
Both writers, though. This is a staff artist. You know, if there was a staff artist that might have looked like this.
At DC, I don't know.
Another thing to look up. I might as well point out, too, over the last 2-3 pages, we have noticed the new guy at GBS, the pipe-smoking guy with the paladin mustache. His hair is brown, as opposed to the blue black of Superman's hair.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that a coloring error?
No.
Can't be. It's consistent.
Yeah.
He has the same hair, the same facial features, just a mustache, and his hair is brown.
Yeah.
I
Weird.
wonder if maybe there's a Superman from a brown planet.
So Superman goes out and how does he even find the Spellbinders? Spellbinders at Norwich Labs, Sound Labs, to steal these white records.
Wait a minute. You're right. You pointed something out. He leaves the building, the GBH building,
GBS.
by a window, or GBS.
It's not grievous bodily harm. It's the Galaxy Broadcasting System.
Just come on, punk rock roots.
Yep.
He flies from the building at the last panel of one page, and on the very next page, first panel, is descending to confront Spellbinder. There was no search. No one talked about where Spellbinder might be. It just was a thing. He was just there.
Yeah.
All right.
It's almost says, well, okay, and then he finds Spellbinder when they're pitching the story, and they basically just wrote that. So Spellbinder tries to use his hypnotic whammy on Superman again. Says, Superman, you've lost your superpowers. Superman says it doesn't work, but Superman seems not as capable to fight this guy as he normally would. So it is kind of working.
There is an editorial note on this page. When Superman, obviously, you have that superhero comic conversation when you're fighting a villain, right? They're going through this whole conversation, and Superman asks him who he used to be, and right there, or who he was, right there on the page, Spellbinder says, I used to be a 2-bit hood out of Gotham City, but while I was in the joint, I did some reading, some experimenting, and now I got this hypnosis stuff down pat. And the editorial note was that his time as a 2-bit hood in Gotham City was when Batman fought him in Detective 358, December. You want to guess a year?
1966?
1966.
So I was a little wrong. It was Detective 358. I think I said 258 earlier. My bad.
Shame on you.
I know, I'm terrible.
You're not very good at this.
Well, sorry.
It's all right. I'll let this one slide.
Thanks.
I was right. So he does have a propeller getup on the back of his outfit, and that's what was suspending him in the air.
What's a really interesting thing about this is it's flat on his back, and so he has to hold his legs either stick straight or out like you're on a swing to avoid, it's cutting himself up.
It's parallel to his torso instead of perpendicular like a helicopter.
Yeah.
So how it lifts him off the ground, I'll never know unless he was leaning forward, in which case he'd have to kick his legs back, and which further case he would lose the lower half of his legs.
Yeah. It does look cool, though. It's, cool is the wrong word. Visually, it's interesting.
Thank you. Interesting.
And that's what we want because it is a comic book.
Yeah, funny books. Love it. I want to do this.
Yeah.
Because we're looking at this page. We talked about Adrienne Roy.
Yeah.
The late Adrienne Roy being the colorist of this issue. But this isn't a thing that she did of her own. This was a pretty standard bit of coloring. These backgrounds being these solid blocks of color and different colors sometimes.
Do you know
just for
why
more dynamic
this is?
posing. Why is that? I knew there was a story. That's why I wanted to get into it.
I used to work on a printing press, so I understand the 4-color process. Okay, you have, the 3 primary colors and black.
Sure.
And then you blend them, to get your variations like orange and things. A lot of times you'll see like blue tanks or purple tanks or oddly colored backgrounds like this is because to maintain the color separation of the figures or objects in the panel, you have to have contrast. And they have a limited palette to work with that will work. Famously, the Incredible Hulk was gray in that first issue and then green thereafter for decades because gray was a very difficult color to get consistently for a character.
That makes a lot of sense. You'd have to, all your registers would have to line up just right every single time.
Exactly.
If they were off a bit, then it would look like a train wreck.
Yeah. And so that's why it's another reason why superheroes work so wonderfully in comics in the 4-color era, because these garish colors work to your advantage in setting up and making this work.
Well, now I feel educated. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're very welcome.
I've worked around presses and I've worked around separation and all that, but putting it in the context of comics and the dynamics of the visual narrative, it makes a whole lot of sense why you would not necessarily have to be consistent with things like background colors, because your dynamism is in the foreground and you're trying to get the separation from that background in order to project something off the page.
Yeah. I mean, Superman looks so great in these, we see a panel or Superman swooping down on something and it's just kind of a brown and yellowy gray cityscape, but bright blue, red, and gold Superman really sticks out. That's an important thing to do.
So a good colorist, especially during the era of the 4-color process, can really take something off the page, make it almost 3-dimensional, give it a little more action and depth than even the penciler was able to do.
Yeah. So you may look at this as it's just another comic book page, but Adrienne Roy is doing serious work here. And if she were not as adept at what she was doing, this wouldn't look so good.
Well, we're at the point in the story where Superman starts to figure out why people don't recognize him as Clark. He's not going to let us in on it, but he's going to take the spell off of Ernie back at WGBS.
Yeah, the artist there, yeah.
And he's going to try to get him to help out. So we'll all figure it out together. But Superman, he's got it down now.
Yeah. So in battle with the Spellbinder, who has stolen these white records from that sound lab. Weird. Why? What does he need them for? We're going to find out.
Speaking of coloring, by the way, he gets part of his uniform burned off.
Yeah.
The only part that remains is the checkerboard portion.
Yeah.
And the mask. Everything else, he's that is a nude flesh color.
No.
That's not a nude flesh color?
In that one panel, there's a little more fuchsia, giving that the orange more of a pinkish hue.
All right, I haven't moved on to the next page. But I'm rereading this as we go along.
Yeah, but if you see the following pages, no, the Spellbinder has not been stripped of his costume.
So here I just trumpeted this wonderful colorist, and then nitpicked
Here's
in
the
the
thing.
same breath.
That bit is not from the colorist, but an error in when it goes to press. The pressmen still have to adjust the level of color in the inks to match to get it right.
So let's track that guy down.
Well, the press that DC and really everyone used in the Bronze Age and previously went out of business, or they stopped using them in I think 91 or 92, and then switched to the higher quality paper and the digital coloring that we are so familiar with currently.
Well, I'm still having fun with this book, and the battle's still going with Spellbinder.
Yeah. I wish I could remember the name of that press. I got to look it up. But, yeah, Spellbinder and his vertical helicopter.
Attempting again to hypnotize Superman to leave him alone.
Yeah.
And Supes says, I must obey.
Sure, I'll leave you alone, but I'm taking you with me. I'll leave, but I'm taking you with me. So he tears off the helicopter thing and squishes it, and then drags the Spellbinder by centrifugal force into a pit that Superman digs, a trench. And then he reveals how he resisted his hypnosis. He'd had super earplugs in.
So I'm going to say this is this thing on his chest then is sonic hypnosis.
It must.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, although it looks like it's just shooting a big spring or a ribbon out of his chest. But
it does. But how do you block that with earplugs? So it's got to be sonic. Sonic hypnosis.
Yeah.
So he's got him in a pit, and that has the benefit of reflecting his sonic hypnosis back at him.
Yeah, and that knocks him out. Knocks him out. And then we were revealed that Spellbinder was wearing special lenses, so he couldn't be hypnotized visually. That's probably why Superman's hypnosis from the giant TV didn't work on him.
And we learned the purpose of the white records.
Yeah, which is?
They're high-frequency noises, they're old sound effects records, and they're high-frequency, high-pitched sounds that he would use to break into people's minds and soften them up. Okay. But it is on a white phonograph record in the middle of his chest with diamond-tipped needles, and he needed the diamonds to make more needle tips.
Of course. That seems really elaborate.
Super obtuse.
Yes. It's a Rube Goldberg machine on his chest. So Spellbinder, defeated, presumably goes to jail. We cut back to the GBS building. Superman, as Clark, checks in with Ernie, the staff artist. And we learn that through super hypnosis, Superman projects a less attractive version of himself, so people perceive Clark differently.
And the way that we find out that Superman projects a very different image is that the task that he has assigned to Ernie, the artist at GBS, is to take headshots of Superman and Clark photographs and then draw them to exact detail. And the Superman that Ernie draws looks like Superman, square-jawed, dimple in the chin, the whole bit. But the Clark has a receding hairline, sunken features, pointy chin. And he holds it up to Lana and he asks her if that looks like him. She's like, that looks exactly like you. And he realizes, it's super hypnosis. He's projecting this idea of the weaker and frailer Clark Kent, and that's what people see.
And he's using that power all the time.
All the time.
Subconsciously.
Passively.
Yeah.
And the way that power is augmented, the way that it becomes super, involves a bit of the Superman lore that we already knew for decades prior to this.
Yeah.
As Superboy, he attempted a regular pair of glasses as Clark and then had to use his I think at the time, X-ray vision in
Yeah,
lieu of heat vision, and melted the glass in them.
Mm-hmm.
So how did he rectify that?
He found a piece of glass from the rocket he was born and was able to either shape them into lenses or found that they were the shards that were lens-shaped already.
Coincidentally, it's right
Wow.
here in the panel, the plexiglass window in the rocket shattered, coincidentally enough, into rounded pieces that happened to fit the frames of
Right,
glass.
because everything from the ship was indestructible, so there's no way for him to,
So he thought he was just solving the problem of melting lenses with his X-ray vision / heat vision. In reality, he was augmenting his gaze.
He created hypno glasses.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I like
Great
that.
at
I
parties.
wonder if that's still canon.
Well, no, this is pre-crisis.
But would the explanation of super hypnosis have gone away with Crisis?
I don't know. I think they liked to do away with a lot of these things, but this would, I think, still really... I mean, post-crisis, I think the Clark Kent just wearing glasses as his Superman disguise doesn't seem to wash. So we could say, I don't know if it's overtly stated, that the same thing is going on. The same basic thing is going on.
I'm excited. I think Bendis should return to the idea of super hypnosis.
Okay.
And how did that not manifest in other ways?
I don't know.
I mean, it's got to be a situation where Clark looked at someone right in the eyes and said something very heartfelt, or
This is
maybe
how
even
Superman
angry.
is. This is why people follow him. This is why he inspires hope. When Superman talks, people listen. And the only people that don't...
When Superman talks, not when Clark talks.
Yeah, but it's Superman's superpowers. You get what I'm saying?
Oh, so even without the glasses, there's still something hypnotic about Superman's gaze.
Yeah.
I think it's because he's dreamy.
Sure. But what I'm saying is, one, this is why people follow him. This is why people are loyal to him. And the people who are really evil are still really evil because they hate him. And it's not working on them enough because they're just so rotten, is what I'm saying.
So if you are susceptible to being swayed by somebody charismatic, then you will inadvertently vote for them. I mean, follow them.
Yeah, I mean, Superman could have made big bucks as at a big tent revival,
Oh, see, there's one I want to explore.
The Jimmy Swaggart of the comic book world.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for letting me share this issue. It was as much fun reading it now as it was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Just because it's an addition to Superman lore that is kind of an anchor piece.
Yeah.
And you didn't get a lot of that outside of, say, the 40s.
Yeah. And this is a question that I'd wrestled with. I hadn't read this issue, like I said, until this week. This is terrific. You know what power I want to see Bendis bring back? Super ventriloquism.
Oh, man. I haven't thought about super ventriloquism in a long time. I do remember reading at least 2 stories where Superman threw his voice into an inanimate object and either frightened somebody or got someone to do something that he could now have done with just super hypnosis. Just casting them a little eye and a wink and a nudge. And, I'll do it.
Okay. So, that's this episode. You can find Comic Reflections on iTunes, Stitcher, or Podbean. Follow us on Twitter at Comic Reflection. Until next time, we'll see you in the funny pages.
Trekker Talk,
a fan podcast devoted to the adventures of 23rd century bounty hunter Mercy St. Clair from the pages of Trekker Comics by writer and artist Ron Randall.
I'm Darren.
And I'm Ruth.
Please join us as we discuss the stories, characters, and art in this excellent retro sci-fi adventure series.
Special episodes feature interviews with Ron Randall himself discussing Trekker and his other comics.
We hope you'll join us as we travel from the dangerous backstreets of New Gelliff to the depths of outer space and everywhere in between.
Listen at Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and YouTube.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, or visit TrekkerTalk.com.
Trekker Talk is part of the Rad Adventures Network at radadventuresnetwork.com.
Hey, I'm Jen.
And I'm Sean. We're here to tell you about our podcast, Worst Collection Ever.
And this is the show where we tell you about the worst comic book collection in existence. And it just happens to belong to us.
We have some of the worst comics from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. They're bad. They're not worth anything.
No good.
Why do we own them?
Bad.
I own a number of issues of Terror Inc. and Guy Gardner.
Basically, we go around to local comic book stores and we buy everything we can out of dollar boxes.
We tell you about the weird stuff in them. We tell you about stuff that's related to them. We go into tangents. And we're very uninformed, so...
Oh my God, totally. But totally check out our podcast because you'll hear us just talk and joke about Marvel books and DC books from God only knows when.
That's right. It's our show, Worst Collection Ever, every Tuesday on iTunes, Stitcher, anywhere you get your podcasts. Download, rate, subscribe, tell a friend.
It'll be good and terrible, but good.